This is part 3 of my interview with Dr. Marielly Mitchell, who is out in Los Angeles, and she has her doctorate in occupational therapy. And this is the shortest conversation. It's only about 3 minutes, and it's going to be at the end of the video. But it's actually the most near and dear to my heart. It's the thing I'm most interested in because it talks about how we as individuals prosper or do not prosper in a particular environment in which we are thrust into, often not of our own voluntary choices, particularly when you're kids. And so here, this picture, you'll see it's my report card, and it's from, I think it's my freshman or sophomore year in high school. It's not a very good report card, and you'll notice my math skills are lacking. I'm not dumb. However, my report card would not reflect that. I had pretty average grades. And then this is my picture of me winning with my award for quietest in my high school yearbook from my senior year. I was not really quietest. I'm still not the quietest. I never was, but people voted for me probably because they saw me in a certain atmosphere, school and parties, which I really wasn't suited for. That wasn't where I flourished. And a big part of life is being able to find an environment in which you actually flourish, because if you're not in those environments, your particular brain, how you process sensory input. I'm a highly sensitive person. I have a very highly sensitive nervous system. And that nervous system does not flourish in really large crowds. It does not flourish in very loud environments. And I remember in college, I had so many people say that before they got to know me, they thought I was a jerk. Because whenever they would see me, it was in places I wasn't comfortable. And when you're not comfortable, you can't be the true you. Your true self doesn't really come out. And that's a big part of postural restoration, because you're thinking, I know that sounds weird because you're probably thinking about hamstrings and glutes and walking and breathing, but the environment in which you're in, your brain will either like or dislike. And when you dislike the environment, your body tightens up. And if you're stuck in an environment and you're forced to learn things that you don't want to learn, like just think of school. I was not meant for the traditional American school system, where you have to sit in chairs at a very young age and you have to learn certain disciplines, and this is what they want you to learn. I would come home and I'd read the New York Times and Newsweek and everything else except for what I was supposed to learn. And anytime you say I have to do something, I'm not going to want to do it. That's one issue. That's a personality issue. But they were making me learn subjects I had no interest in, and it was reflected in my grades. And then I was thrust into environments. And once I started to do poorly in school, and then people are saying, oh, you're shy. I'm not shy. I was not shy. Shyness is not a trait. It's a learned behavior. You can be sensitive, and I think by nature my nervous system is sensitive, but I was not shy. But then I started to think of myself as shy, and that became my reality. But then when you think about it, I've taught dancing group classes in front of hundreds of people, and I did a good job. I spoke at this AAPMD conference. I spoke at a PRI conference. I dance in front of people, putting myself up for judgment. I take acting classes, again, putting myself in front of people for judgment. I was never quietest, and I was never shy. I was just never in an environment in which I was able to flourish. This visual represents part of what we're talking about in this 3-minute clip. And I just want to give a visual before you actually hear it, because she goes through it kind of quickly. But I want you to get a visual of what we're talking about. And it says that sensory processing is first. How our brain is sensing sensory input. Processing sensory input is first. And that will, how you process sensory input will affect how you position yourself in space. It'll affect what you pay attention to. It'll affect your arousal, how hyped up or how relaxed you are. And of course, so your sensory processing comes first, and then your motor skills will come second. So that sensory processing precedes motor function. And then on top of that, we have our executive function, how we manage life, all our day-to-day decisions and abstract motor planning, or abstract planning in general. But there's also, I'm going to add one other visual to this, and it's this one, and I created this one. All of this information is being processed not only up top, but in that midbrain area where in the brainstem, where life happens, where all our autonomic nervous system function is being produced, is being controlled, but also fear, uh, what you like or dislike, your sense of self, your sense of your own body, your sense of the ground, your arousal levels, all of that information is being processed at this brainstem level. And that's then informing how you base your decision processes, how you base your decisions, how you base your life choices, how you carry out your life. So I just wanted these two visuals to be in your mind as we discuss the topics that we're about to discuss. And I would also mention one other thing about intelligence, because I mentioned my own lack of intelligence in certain areas, but I have intelligence in other areas. Intelligence is pretty relative. If you take me, I'm good at a particular thing. I have an intelligence for a particular subject that you may not have a particular intelligence for. It doesn't mean you can't learn it. It's just that we all have our strengths. I cannot do math. There's other things I cannot do very well. I just happen to do certain things well. But it's all relative. If you take me or any other Western educated individual who's really, really smart, and they get all these advanced degrees, and you put them in Papua New Guinea, off the coast of, I think it's off the coast of Australia, and they're forced to live in the jungle, and they have to live, or put them in the Amazon, or any other country, and they have to live, how well are they going to do? Not so well. So our intelligence is being shaped by, if you're in the United States or Western Europe, let's just keep it to the United States. If your intelligence is being shaped in a very Western way to function in a Western industrial complex, which is more now information-based than anything else, that may not transfer over to other areas of the world. So how smart are you? You know, again, if you're forced to live in the desert, how long are you going to last? Other people who live there, they're going to be fine, even though they don't have an advanced degree in something. They're fine. So your intelligence doesn't always, and my intelligence doesn't always carry over to every area, but that's, again, you have to find a place where your particular intelligence is valuable to others and beneficial to others. And that's, I believe people will be a lot happier if they can actually find that. But unfortunately, a lot of people are stuck in situations where their intelligence and their particular gifts are not being utilized properly because they're in the wrong environments. Stands me.
So yeah, I wonder if people are misidentified sometimes, and that's what I'm really getting at. How do people make the distinction between someone who's just not really anything wrong with them, they just can't take too much stimulation?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people like that. And I think they like almost like self-diagnose and like, I'm just like a really anxious person. It's like, actually, no, your sensory profile just doesn't flourish in this type of environment.
Yes.
And the thing about sensory processing is that, like, again, I was saying earlier, like sensory precedes motor. You have to have appropriate sensory processing in order to have appropriate like motor / adaptive responses. Because once you are regulated, you're able to, there's 3 parts to motor planning. You're able to ideate. This is like when people are in flow, in a regulated state, right? Optimal level of arousal is what we call it. They're able to ideate, initiate, and execute, which is what you do as a human all day long. But if you are not having your sensory needs met, you get into basically fight or flight or freeze.
Yes.
And a lot of people get into freeze.
Yes.
And that's when they get into a conference room and they don't know what to say to that group of people who are standing together. And you're like, I don't know what to say. So I'm just going to go back to my room and like eat my sandwich by myself. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And so, or, I'm going to go do something that's more passive where I just read a book and I ingest information because I don't need to do anything. I don't need to ideate, initiate, or execute. Yeah. So if your sensory needs aren't met in a specific type of environment, or it's completely overwhelming or too overstimulating, you literally cannot turn on the part of your brain that makes you come up with ideas in order to problem solve how to like navigate that environment. And that's like what we specialize as an occupational therapist.
Oh, is perfect.
Helping people so like, in pediatrics, we make a lot of obstacle courses and parents are always like, why do you do that? And it's because every single step of an obstacle course is an idea that the child has to come up with. And you can analyze the way someone does something or follows a recipe or comes up with ideas or makes a craft is such a reflection of their ability to motor plan, abstract motor plan. But if also, like, if you don't have good sensory processing, you don't have good physical motor planning, which is then your coordination, which is the foundation for higher executive motor planning, which is what I was just talking about. So you see these deficits, like there's like the sensory issues, you see physical motor planning issues, which then lays a really poor foundation for higher executive motor planning issues, which is like social skills and like abstract thinking and planning your day and cleaning your room, doing your taxes, like managing all your stuff. Like it just keeps adding on to itself. And certain people have certain profiles that just do well in better environments. You know what I mean? Like some people get like really nervous when it's quiet. They don't like it. Some people need constant because they're trying to avoid something, right? So there's something there that they can't address or that's deeper rooted, right? And that's a whole nother thing. And then again, like to bring it back to like the PRI and like the mouth and the myo stuff, if you're mouth breathing, doesn't matter what your sensory profile needs, you are in fight or flight. Doesn't matter.